We know that in the year Tovshin Chof Tes and Tovshin Lamed, going into Tovshin Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe spoke every Farbrengen and another piece of Igeres HaTshuva. Igeres HaTshuva is the third chelik of Tanya, and the Rebbe spoke every Farbrengen, Kmat every Farbrengen, during that time on the piece of Igeres HaTshuva. It all started Chof of Tovshin Chof Ches. The Rebbe explained the piece of Igeres HaTshuva. He explained the Lashon of the first Perek of Igeres HaTshuva where it says, Mitzvahs HaTshuva min HaTorah. So the Alter Rebbe refers to Tshuva as a mitzvah. And the Alter Rebbe goes according to the sheet of the Rambam. So the Rebbe explained by Ariches that according to the Alter Rebbe, the Rambam holds that doing Tshuva is a mitzvah. It's one of the Teryag mitzvahs. And not like the Minchas Chinuch, who says that according to the Rambam, it's not a mitzvah, the mitzvah is only vidui. And not only that Farbrengen, but the next few Farbrengens, the Rebbe continued in this biur of the Lashon of the Igeres HaTshuva Perek Aleph, Mitzvahs HaTshuva min HaTorah. Then, towards the end of the year, Tovshin Chof Ches, and the beginning of Tovshin Lamed, the Rebbe said that they should print Igeres HaTshuva in a separate kuntras. They should print Igeres HaTshuva in a separate pamphlet and give it out separately. And the Rebbe said that they should print it in the regular form, the regular size, the way the Tanya is, and also in pocket size. So 2 Hitzois came out with the blue cover, with the name on the cover, Lakuta Amorim Tanya Cherik Shlishi Anika B'Shem Igeres HaTshuva. One was the regular size of Tanya, and one was pocket size, the same thing. And in the Hagdomas of the Meitzi Le'er, it says, the Lashon, Al pi heiros kvet lushad mushli te matfisim an bezeh befot stat metanya hitzos kost lakute amorim chelik shlishi anikri b'shem Igeres HaTshuva asher lekvet lushad marazok that were printing Igeres HaTshuva. And at the end they also added the Luach HaTikun Hagos of the Tzemach Tzedek and certain biurim of the Rebbe in Igeres HaTshuva, those that were available then in print from different letters that the Rebbe wrote. And the Rebbe kocht sich a lot that year, in that year, the year after, in Igeres HaTshuva. And this pamphlet was very important to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would hold it in a siddur. And from time to time, we would see that by davening, the Rebbe would look into that pamphlet. I remember once, during that year, the Rebbe came late from the Eil, and he davened Mincha late, and he wanted to daven Ma'ariv right away, but then he still would make a hefsek between Mincha and Ma'ariv, so it shouldn't go straight one after another. So the Rebbe didn't leave the shul. He stayed by his stender and waited a few minutes. But while he was waiting a few minutes till they started Ma'ariv, the Rebbe took out this pamphlet of Igeres HaTshuva and was looking at this pamphlet of Igeres HaTshuva. And from that Farbrengen, from the beginning of Tovshin Chof Tes, every Farbrengen, the Rebbe explained another piece of Igeres HaTshuva. He went with a seder of Igeres HaTshuva. Mamish, like a person who's giving a shir in a sefer, and he goes page by page, so to speak, and every Farbrengen he explained another part, and then another part, the next part of the Igeres HaTshuva. And this went on all the way till Tovshin Lamed, the end of Tovshin Lamed, which was Parshas Dvorim. The Rebbe continued throughout the whole Igeres HaTshuva till finally he explained the last piece of Igeres HaTshuva. Then Chof Ov started another part. Chof Ov Tovshin Lamed, the Rebbe started explaining every Farbrengen another piece of his father's biurim in Lekutei Levi Yitzchok of Igeres HaTshuva. Because we have Lekutei Levi Yitzchok on Tanya, so a little bit there is also on Igeres HaTshuva. So the Rebbe went piece by piece for the next Farbrengens biurim on Lekutei Levi Yitzchok of what he says on Igeres HaTshuva. Then a lot of these siches that the Rebbe said on Igeres HaTshuva were written up and given into the Rebbe to be Magia. Now, some the Rebbe was Magia, some the Rebbe was not Magia, but those that the Rebbe was Magia came out in pamphlets. The first pamphlet had a cover on it saying Biurim of Igeres HaTshuva from the Rebbe, and it was not really regular print, but it was photostat of typing, and there was one pamphlet, and it finished by page 14. Then when continued, the next pamphlet started with page 15 as a hemshel to the pamphlet before. Then it came to a third pamphlet that all these siches that were mugi by the Rebbe came out in these pamphlets. Later on, this was printed in the Biyurim of Tanya, the Kutei Biyurim of Rebbe Shia Korf. These were printed, and the details to that I will explain in the next broadcast. First, I want to mention that when I said in the previous recording that the pamphlet of Igeres HaTshuva was printed Tovshin Lamed, it was a slip of the tongue. The Pleites HaLoshen, it was printed in the beginning of Tovshin Chof Tes. Tovshin Chof Tes Chofov, that's when the Rebbe first spoke about a certain part in the Geras HaTshuva. And then, in the beginning of Tov Shin Chof Tes, he asked that they should print this pamphlet, as I explained before. And you could imagine was for a koch there was by the Anash and by the Bochrim, especially in the Geras HaTshuva then. Since the Rebbe Tzach Shtar gekocht those years in the Geras HaTshuva, so all the Bochrim were basically clear, Boki, remembered the whole of the Geras HaTshuva by heart. And not only Geras HaTshuva, but also Hilchas Tshuva la Rambam, because a lot of the sichas of the Rebbe in Geras HaTshuva were connected to different halachas in the Rambam Hilchas Tshuva. So they were Boki in Hilchas Tshuva. As I mentioned once, that in that year, Tov Shin Chof Tes, we met at Rav Soloveitchik, and we spoke to him in Hilchas Tshuva of the Rambam, and that was by him a very special thing. He used to koch zachalat in Rambam, and especially in Hilchas Tshuva. So he was surprised that Bochrim know Hilchas Tshuva la Rambam. Even Bochrim know how to learn, but they know Hilchas Niskebom and things like that, but not Hilchas Tshuva. And here he was surprised, but it was all because the Rebbe Tzach gekocht in Hilchas Tshuva. And as I said, these sichas were, the Mugadika ones of these sichas were printed in Biurim, this Kuntras called, the Kuntresim called the Biurim Legeras HaTshuva. Later on, the Rebbe was Magia many of the sichas, and they are scattered throughout Likutei Sichas. But mainly, in Tovshin Lamed Gimel, they were printed in the Sefer called Likutei Biurim, the Sefer Atanya Chelik Sheni, written by Rav Korf. We know Rav Korf wrote the first Chelik of Likutei Biurim Atanya, which were his Biurim, and in it a lot of the Biurim of the Rebbe. But this Sefer, Chelik Sheni, is only of the Rebbe. That's the way the Chelik Sheni was printed in the first Eitzah. Later on, they changed the whole Seder, but this is the way it was, only of the Rebbe. That this was a Sefer that was made up of three parts. All the Biurim of the Rebbe in the Geras HaTshuva, then Biurim of the Rebbe in Likutei Levi Yitzchok and the Geras HaTshuva, which were also built in Mugya. Later on, the Rebbe, for Likutei Sichas of Magia, all the Sichas of the Rebbe on Likutei Levi Yitzchok, on the Geras HaTshuva, the Rebbe was Mugya. But at that time, it wasn't Mugya yet, so built in Mugya. They printed in the Sefer. And also then there is a chelik of the Sefer, which is a sofer of more Biurim of the Rebbe for the whole Tanya, which did not go into the first chelik of Likutei Biurim. And it says in the Hagdome, the Pesach Dover, signed by Rabbi Shir Korf, after he says what the Sefer is, it says this Loshen, Kol ze nase bipkudas kveit kedushas admor shlita. This is all done by the order of the Rebbe. And I think that the Rebbe was Magia des Pesach Dover, that this was by the order of the Rebbe. And because this all was of the Rebbe, so Rabbi Shia Korf gave over some of the work to other people. So I remember the other people who worked on it was Rabbi Shua Munshain Olav HaSholem, and Yebodel B'chaim L'chaim. Rabbi Yosef Minkovich worked on it, and myself worked on it, in collecting all these different things to put it into the Sefer. And also, we used to ask from time to time the Rebbe certain shaylas, and the Rebbe would answer. And also, we would give into the Rebbe, when we found in different siches, like small biurim on a piece of Tanya, so Rabbi Shua Munshain would write it up and give it into the Rebbe, sign Rabbi Shia Korf's name, because he gave him permission to sign his name, asking the Rebbe to be Magia. And the Rebbe was Magia many pieces of biurim on Tanya. And that went into the last chelik of this Sefer, the new biurim of the Rebbe in Tanya that was not printed in the first chelik. Till finally, I remember the Rebbe answered, on the last one, he was Magia a piece that he sent in, and the Rebbe wrote that it's enough. How much you're going to give in? I don't remember if he wrote, I have no time or whatever, but the Rebbe was already saying, enough, don't give in anymore, and the Taka didn't give in anymore, and that became the third part of this Sefer, Biurim of the Rebbe, and the rest of and the whole of Tanya. So this is the Sefer, Biurim Likutei Biurim Sefer Tanya Chelik Beis. The majority of it is Biurim of the Rebbe on Geras HaTshuva Davke. The whole Sefer is from the Rebbe, but most of it is on the Geras HaTshuva. And this was all around the time when the Rebbe tzag gekocht in the Geras HaTshuva, and everyone tzag gekocht in the Geras HaTshuva. It was shining mamish in Lubavitch. The union of the Geras HaTshuva was so much tefes mokim. And this pamphlet that the Rebbe said to give out was mefursim. They sent it out. They gave it out to different people. But the Rebbe, this is such a chosh of a thing to kochzach in the Geras HaTshuva. Benigay the Rebbe's koch in the Geras HaTshuva, from beginning of Chof Tovshin Chof Ches, Chof Tes, Lamed to Lamed Aleph, and the printing of the Kuntres, I want to mention that to show that it was important, and the printing of the Kuntres was so important, that the Rebbe actually paid for the printing of the Kuntres. The Hakdosha in the back of the Kuntres, where it always says who paid for it and for who it says like this: Le Zichronos Kveid Imay Hatzitkonis Harebonis. This printing of this Kuntres is to remember his mother, the Kveid Imay, the Tzitkonis Harebonis Moras Chano, Bas hatzitkonis harabonis moras rochel, ubas haravagon haravachoser Reb Meir Shleime, tein nishmos tzur b'seir achayim, and then it says, Nitvas sefer zeh al yedei kveit kedushas admor shlita milubavitch. So the Rebbe himself printed it, l'zeicher nishmas of his mother. He printed this kuntres, shows how important the Rebbe was this kuntres in Dinyan of Geras HaTshuva. And also, when the Rebbe was talking a lot about the Geras HaTshuva and all the Farbrengens, it was also connected to a Hiseiris in the coming of Mashiach. Because the Rebbe, quite a few times during the years when he spoke about the Geras HaTshuva, he connected it to the fact that Rambam says that Sof Yisrael last tshuva, that if the Torah promised at the end will be that the Yidden will do tshuva miyat hein negolin. And the Rebbe said, by learning a Geras HaTshuva, this brings us to do tshuva, and it's me'era dinyan of tshuva b'meila, this is memayar the gula. And since the Rebbe spoke about so many inyonim in the Geras HaTshuva, it brought a hiseiris amongst Hanash that this is a zman mesugul for the coming of Mashiach. And especially when later on there was the Siyum of Sefer Torah of Mashiach, all this put together made the Hiseiris in the coming of Mashiach much stronger. I usually repeat in these broadcasts only things that I witnessed or I was there, something that happened to me, to my parents, also things that I heard from the person himself who it happened to. But now I'm going to tell over something that the general thing we saw, but the details is just something that was floating around in 770 at that time. And that is concerning a Yechidus that took place on Thursday night, the Dalad Oder Sheni, Tovshin Chov Zayin, which is 1967. When we saw, this is what we saw, that a group of Elter Chassidim went into the Rebbe to Yechidus. This was Reb Nissen Telushkin, Reb Shmuel Witten, Reb Berl Rifkin, Reb Zalman Duchman, Reb Yisrael Jacobson, possibly, I don't remember, maybe it was Rabbi Kazanovsky also, I don't remember, and we saw them go into Yechidus, that we saw. But obviously what's spoken about was something that only they knew. But later on we heard the background and we heard what happened. And maybe some of the details are not so, but this is the way it was floating around in 770. That the Rebbetzin had said to one of the Elter Chassidim that the Rebbe lately is not taking care of his health. I guess she said he's not eating and drinking enough, not taking care of himself, not sleeping enough. So she asked that someone speak to the Rebbe, the Elter Chassidim, to speak to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe should watch his health. So they came to Rabbi Chadakov and they told Rabbi Chadakov that this group wants to go and speak to the Rebbe. The way the story goes, that they didn't tell Rabbi Chadakov what it's about. Rabbi Chadakov said he's going to speak to the Rebbe as the Rebbe. He asked the Rebbe and the Rebbe agreed, not knowing what they want. Now, to go in and speak to the Rebbe, giving the Rebbe, so to speak, advice, how he should behave is something that's a big risk, because by the Rebbe we know you can't give the Rebbe advice. So they took a risk, but they thought they'll try. They went into Yechidus that night. That's what was going around in 770 that happened. They didn't know how the Rebbe is going to receive them. The Rebbe didn't know what they want. They went in and the Rebbe looked at them, smiled at them, I think that's what they said. And the Rebbe asked them, no, what do they want? So the main speaker was Reb Nissen Telushkin. I think he was the oldest. I think it was even older than Reb Shmuel, I'm not sure, but I think he was the one that spoke. And he started explaining to the Rebbe how the world needs the Rebbe. We all need the Rebbe. And b'meile, they're bringing out that the Rebbe should watch his health, take care of his health. And the Rebbe said to them, so what do you mean? What do you want me to do? So they said, well, the Rebbe Fabrings a lot, and Fabringen is a very big strain, especially on Shabbos. So the Rebbe said, okay, he'll do it less maybe. L'peil he didn't. L'peil then he Fabringed a lot, Fabringed long hours, etc., etc. But he said, okay, that he could do. Then they said that the Rebbe goes very often to the oil, and that's very hard, especially when it's cold. So the Rebbe said to them that he doesn't go so often. He goes Erev Rosh Chodesh, that's where you're supposed to go. Then it says in Mishnah Chassidim you should go Tesvov, and Molam he goes more, but it's not so much, he said. And in the gay, what you say, it's cold? He said, no, it's not so cold. And he says, you see Reb Zalman, he's pointed to Reb Zalman Duchman, also goes very often to the oil. Ask him, he says, it's not so cold. And then it's not so hard, you could go to the oil. And then he says, but Bechlal, that I should minimize in going to oil is not possible, because I have to carry this whole burden on myself. I mean, the Rabbis, it's my responsibility, I can't not. And he said, you said yourself before that you need a Rebbe, I also need a Rebbe. In other words, the Rebbe was saying that by him going to the oil, that's how he has the Rebbe. So he said that to minimize in going to the oil, that's not going to happen, because he needs a Rebbe, and this is how he has the Rebbe. And Benegay, what you say that I don't eat or drink enough, so he says, it's not so. I eat as well as everyone else. He says lately there happened certain things. I guess the Rebbe wasn't feeling so well. So when I realized that, I started taking more careful. I was more careful about it. Then they also said that the Rebbe takes Zichronos. It takes a long time, a lot of time. It takes away Kayach from the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, true, in that union of Zichronos, I stopped. Used to be 3 times a week. Now I only take Zichronos, take people 2 times a week. So it's much easier. And he gave an example. The Moshel tonight, 29 people are supposed to enter Zichronos tonight. And I will make it brief. So he said, yes, that stock is something that's becoming less. But B'chlolis, the Rebbe received them nicely, not the way they were afraid that maybe the Rebbe is going to be upset. Why are you mixing into my business, telling me what to do? He received them, and this is the way the story was that the Rebbe said to them. So again, the fact that they went in, we know. What was said then, and the background behind it is something only that we heard that was floating around 770 at that time. Rabbi Yosef Felik was one of the pillars of the Jewish community in Montreal, and especially of the Lubavitcher community. And later on he moved to Miami, and here he was one of the pillars of the Jewish community, especially of the Lubavitcher community in Miami. And by one of the Fabrengens, he told the following story. His daughter became a Kala to a very, very fine bocher, Isser David Silverman from England. He's the one that's now the author of the very, very special, interesting, and inspirational book called Eternal Values. It's based on the Rebbe's teachings concerning Midas Teves, how a Yidav Zechfiren, etc., etc. So he was the Chassan, and they had planned the Chassanah for a few days before Pesach. The meaning was that before a Chassanah, the parents and the Chassan Kala would go into Yichidus. So 2 days after Purim, he and his wife and the Kala went into Yichidus before the Chassanah. Now he says usually when he would go into Yichidus, the Rebbe would smile to him. Knowing Mr. Felig, it fits too. That was his nature, and the Rebbe would smile to him and be very friendly. This time, he says, when he went in, he saw right away that the Rebbe was very serious. The Rebbe read his settle, and after he read his settle, the Rebbe turns around to him and he says, what's going to be with Sheva Brachas? He couldn't understand what the Rebbe is asking. What do you mean, what's going to be with Sheva Brachas? Every Chasana, after the Chasana, you have Sheva Brachas. So he didn't answer. So the Rebbe asked him again, what's going to be with Sheva Brachas? So this time he answered the Rebbe that in Mirz Hashem we're going to make Sheva Brachas like after every Chasana. Then the Rebbe asks him another question. What does the Chassan plan to do after the Chasana? This time he wondered even more. Just a few days before, the Rebbe had answered the Chassan that he should go into Kollel, the Kollel that's in New York, the Kollel next to 770. So why is the Rebbe asking what the Chassan is going to do? So he answered the Rebbe that the Chassan is going into Kollel, as the Rebbe said. Then the Rebbe turns around and asks him a third question. Where is the young couple, the married young couple, going to be for Pesach? And here he again wondered, why would the Rebbe ask that? What is that? Why is that important? What does that have any special meaning? But anyway, he answered, since the Chassan is going to be in Montreal, so they're going to be for Pesach in Montreal. They went out of Yichidus and they wondered. It was very strange. It seemed something very strange. The Rebbe asked these 3 strange questions, and even the Kala was very upset, and they didn't know what to make of it. Something is there. They went to the Maskirim and they asked the Maskirim if they could explain it, and they also said it's something very strange they didn't understand. Pel Mamash, when it came to the Chasana, everything was ready. The Mechotonim, Mr. and Mrs. Silverman came from England. They were accepted, received very nicely, and they really, really were very happy about it. And the Chasana was beautiful. And Rabbi Yosef Felik's brother, Reb Nosson Felik, was the one that was involved with the Mechotonim to make him feel good, etc., etc. The day after the Chasana was the first Sheva Brachas, and Reb Nosson Felik was going to make the Sheva Brachas. About 6 o'clock in the afternoon, he calls the hotel, speaks to Mrs. Silverman, the Mechoteniste, and he says to her, are you ready to come to the Sheva Brachas? She said, my husband laid down, I'm going to wake him up, and we're going to get ready, we're going to come soon. She goes to wake him up, he wakes up, sits down, gets dressed, and when he's putting on his shoes, he didn't feel good, he fell back, and right away they had to call an ambulance, because he had a heart attack, and obviously the Chassan Kala and the others went to the hospital with Mr. Silverman, and after a while he never passed away. Now, since this happened, obviously there was no Sheva Brachas that night, and there was no Sheva Brachas at all, because the Levaya was in England, he was buried in England, so the Chassan Kala traveled to the Levaya to England. So obviously there was no Sheva Brachas. Also, he couldn't go into Kollel because his father left a business in the middle of his business, so somebody had to take it over. So after correspondence with the Rebbe, the Chassan had to take over the business, so he didn't go into Kollel. And then, since they were in England already, obviously they didn't come back for the Sheva Brachas to Montreal, so the Sheva Brachas the Pesach, they didn't come back to Montreal, so they stayed Pesach in England. So now they understood the three questions of the Rebbe, because all the three things happened. The Sheva Brachas did not take place, the Chassan did not go to the Kollel, and they did not stay in Montreal for Pesach. So here we see how every word of the Rebbe has meaning, and you have to take it seriously. In the end of the Chovs, or the beginning of the Lameds, a few people got together and they made certain tikkunim, things that had to be fixed in the Siddur Tilas Hashem that we daven in. And they gave him to the Rebbe a whole list of things that they think have to be fixed. And the Rebbe agreed to many of it. But there were a few things that I remember the Rebbe did not agree. And what comes to my mind, there probably is more things, but what comes to my mind of what the Rebbe did not agree is that B'negeye Hallel, when we say Heidul Hashem Kitayv Kilei Chazdei, and then we say Yemen Yisrael Kilei Chazdei. So it says in Sefer HaMenhagim that between each one we say again Heidul Hashem Kitayv Kilei Chazdei. That means after you say Yemen Yisrael Kilei Chazdei, you say Heidul Hashem Kitayv Chazdei. And after the Chazan says Yemen Beis Haren, you say Heidul Hashem Kitayv Chazdei. After Yemen Yireh Hashem, you say Heidul Hashem Kitayv Chazdei. So they asked the Rebbe that maybe we should write in the Siddur that this is what you have to do. And the Rebbe wrote not to write it. A second thing is that they asked the Rebbe, they want to put in benching, Harachamanu Yivarach Es Adonainim Reinu V'Rabbeinu, and the Rebbe said not to put it in. And also remember a very small thing, that in Birchas Krishma, before you say Shema, where you say in the piece there, Tizborech, it says at the end, V'kulam Peschem Espiyam B'Gdush of Torah B'Shiro V'Zimro U'Mvorchim U'Meshapchim U'Mefoarim U'Maritzim U'Magdishim U'Mamlichim. So the Kama is, after U'Mevorchim U'Meshapchim there's a Kama, U'Mefoarim Maritzim there's a Kama, and then Magdishim U'Mamlichim. But the way the Rebbe used to say it, when he davened for the Amid, you could hear, he would say, Meshavchim, U'Mefoarim, U'Maritzim, Magdishim, U'Mamlichim. The three, Maritzim, Magdishim, U'Mamlichim, went together. So they asked the Rebbe, maybe they should take out the Kama after the word U'Maritzim and put it before. It should say, Mevorchim, Shabchim, U'Mefoarim, Kama, U'Maritzim, Magdishim, U'Mamlichim. And the Rebbe did not agree. He said you should leave it the way it is. Some of the things that the Rebbe did agree, so a whole bunch of things that the Rebbe did agree, but what I remember, small things, is that in Minche, in Shemini Esrei, the old Tilas Hashem Siddur, before Sim Sholem, it would have Birchas Kohanim. Because you do say sometimes Birchas Kohanim, Chazoras Hashatz of Mincha, that's on a tiny Sibur. So it had the Birchas Kohanim in Shemini Esrei. On the other hand, by Shachris, before Sim Sholem, they didn't have Birchas Kohanim, but it was on the bottom of the page. And it said that on Chazoras Hashatz you say Birchas Kohanim. L'chura, it should be the opposite. Because by Shachris, every day the Chazan says Birchas Kohanim. By Mincha, it's very seldom that he says Birchas Kohanim. So why by Mincha is Birchas Kohanim inside the Shemini Esrei? And by Shachris, that's on the bottom. So he asked the Rebbe to change it, and the Rebbe agreed to change it. So therefore, the Sidurim, the way they are now, in Shachris, Birchas Kohanim is in the Shemini Esrei, in the Pnim, up on top of the page, and in Mincha, it's on the bottom of the page. Another thing, by Ma'ariv, the old Sidurim, when it says in the first bracha, Mavdil ben Yemu ben Laila, ben Loila Hashem Tzvoi Shmei, Baruch Atah Hashem Amariv Arovim. So, after the words, Mavdil ben Yemu ben Loila was a big period. And then it said, Hashem Tzvoi Shmei, Kame, Baruch Atah Hashem Amariv Arovim. L'chura, it should be the opposite. The period belongs before Baruch. And between ben Yemu ben Laila, Hashem Tzvoi Shmei should be a Kame. So they asked the Rebbe that too, and the Rebbe agreed that they should change it, and that's why it was changed. So they put the Kama between Umavda B'Yem V'in Loila and Hashem Tzvay Shemei. And after that, between that and Baruch, there is a period. I also think, but I'm not sure, that it's from that time on that in Krishma Shalamite they put in the Yehirotzain and then the Rebbeinu Ilomim. Because the original prince of the Tilas Hashem Siddur did not have the Yehirotzain before Ona B'Chayach. And it also did not have at the end the Rebbeinu Ilomim. And the later prince, they put it in. So I think it was from that time on that they did this, that they put in the Hirotzain, and then later they put in the Rebbeinu Ilomim. But this, I'm not sure that it started from then. But definitely, Amolet wasn't there, and later it became. And there are many, many more things that the Rebbe agreed to, and maybe there are some things that the Rebbe didn't agree to. But these are just a few things that come to mind. Concerning the inyan of the Talmidim Ashluchim, so Shabbos Parshas Toildes, which was Shabbos Mvorchim Kislev Tovshin Mem Dalet, the Rebbe spoke about this, Bariches. Not only that, he was later Magia de Siche, especially as a part specially connected to Talmidim Ashluchim. Actually, then he also connected it to Yungelite who were sent as Shluchim to Keilolim. But the same idea. And here the Rebbe said that the person, the Bochrim, are sent lechatchila, or those who are sent to the Keilel, they're sent, and the fact that they're sent shows that they're special, that they're chosen to be sent to Shluchim. So they were sent to learn Torah and to be Neiris Lahoyer, to be a guiding light for others. Therefore, they shouldn't mix in the Anholas HaYeshiva, to the Rosh Hashiva, Kayetze Bezeh, or the Anhol of the Keilel, and you shouldn't give opinions. And you shouldn't make a fight. And therefore the Rebbe said that he's asking B'chol Loshen Shel Bakosha, which means he's begging, that the Bochrim or the Keilel Yingelite that are on Shlichus under the Anholas, so they're sent to learn Torah, to be Neiris Lahoyer, not to mix in the Anholas HaYeshiva and the Meizdes. If a Bocher, a Shliach Bocher, has a taina against the Rosh Hashiva, and he thinks that things have to be changed, and according to his understanding, is 100% right. So it's very right that he should go over to the Rosh Hashiva and speak to him in a way al pitayra, which is b'darka neim b'darka sholem, quietly, certainly without a tumult. And if that doesn't help, then he should go to the one who's on top of him, the one that's in charge, but not chas v'sholem to make any machlekes. And the Rebbe says, I'm saying very clearly, the way to fix this is not, don't write to me any letters, don't tell me the matzev, don't mix me, and I don't want to get mixed into this. To say that the way that Rabbi made it, that you have to speak to the Anhola, or to the ones that are on top Anhola, b'darka neim b'darka sholem, asking them that they should fix whatever has to be fixed. And if the Anhola agrees with you, it's fine, mateva manoim, it's very good. But if the Anhola doesn't agree with you, then you have to put away your seichel. And since you were sent as a shliach to learn Torah and to be a Neir Lahoyer, not to make machlekes Anhola, you have to accept the authority of the Anhola. And if you do not do that, and you're not keeping the rotzen of the Meshaleach, so then you're shliach. So he says, if you can accept it, is good. Then you should sit down and learn B'is Yashvis and find Mateva Manoim. But if you think that you can't do it, obviously you think that really what's happening is wrong. And the Rebbe doesn't say that always the Bochrim, the Talmidim are wrong. He just said, but if you feel it's wrong, but you didn't accomplish to change the Anhola's opinion, and you can't stay here under this circumstance, you don't feel like it could work under these circumstances, so I'm packing the pack your packages and go back to the place from where you came from. And he said, and not going to have kindness to you, but this is what you have to do. So the Rebbe made it very clear that the whole purpose is to learn Torah and to be Neiris Lahoyer. And by this sikha also, just like I said concerning that settle, on the one hand the Rebbe is saying something very, very sharp, but the Rebbe does show what the Shluchim Bochrim are. And he says clearly that he sent the Bochrim Shluchim, in other words, they are Shluchim from the Rebbe, and they have all the concept of Shluchim. Everything is there. But they have certain guidelines how they have to behave. Like any shliach has guidelines how he has to behave. But the fact that there is something special, and the Rebbe says clearly, the fact that you're sent shows that you are chosen. The Rebbe uses the word bocher with the word mufchar, that you are a chosen person, that you are special people who are sent. But they have to accomplish what they were sent for. And the Rebbe says, if not, then they have no place to be there. And for sure that the Bochrim take this seriously, and they do what they're supposed to, and b'meile they fulfill the shlichus b'miluay. The second sikha for Parsha V'zeis HaBrocha in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yudaled, is taken from the Fabrengen, Leil Simchas Torah Tovshin Lamed Dalet. And towards the end of the sikha, the Nekuda there is that the Sheirish of Neshamis, the Sheirish of Yidden, Lamailo, is higher than the Sheirish of Torah. Nevertheless, Lamato, how are they Megala their Sheirish through Torah? That's why the Seder is that Yisrael miskasher and be'iraisa, Yidden connect themselves to Torah, and Torah is miskasher be'kutshabricho. Torah connects to the Eibishter, so the connection that Yidden get to the Eibishter is through Torah. But when they get the connection through Torah, that nisgala the Sheirish of Yidden, which is higher than Torah, that they're closer to the Eibishter than the Torah, and then they are megala this, mamshich this also into the Torah. That even originally they are lower than the Torah, and they connect to the Eibishter through Torah, but when the Torah connects them, So then, that nisgala that the sheirish of Yidden is higher than the Torah, and their mamshich this higher sheirish into the Torah. And when the Rebbe said this by the Fabrengen, he added, and he said, like we know b'negei tshuva, that tshuva is higher than Torah. B'horaya, tshuva could forgive for avedas that you did and the pkam that you have b'negei Talmud Torah. So Hashem tshuva is higher. Nevertheless, the gilui of the union of tshuva comes through Torah dafke. When the people who prepared the Sikha for Hagoah, wrote this in the Sikha, wrote these words, that al derech hayedua b'negei tshuva, and went on to explain b'negei tshuva. When the Rebbe was Magiya the Sikha, the Rebbe crossed out this paragraph where there's an example of tshuva, and the Rebbe wrote these words, Guf v'neshama la'osid lovei. In other words, this has to do with the union of Guf and Neshama la'osid lovei. Inyan oruch, that's a long thing, v'lei atiku akana, don't be mighty, don't bring it down here, because it's too long. So the Rebbe said this is connected to the union of Guf and Neshama la'osid lovei, and this is a long inyan, and therefore not to bring it here, and the Rebbe crossed out this paragraph. Now we have to learn pshat in what the Rebbe meant when he wrote these words. The first years of the Yeshiva G'dayla here in Miami, and the Rebbe sent Talmidim Ashluchim, so from time to time the Rebbe would send them letters. Usually it was an answer on their duch, and other times he would send them letters. I want to mention one interesting letter. Tovshin Lamed Hey. There was a Michtav Kloli that the Rebbe sent, dated Yom Shlishi Shehuch Bo Beketeves, Tuesday, Parshas V'Yisrael Eis HaChoyel. And there the Rebbe speaks about Nefzoyim and things like that. After that, the Rebbe wrote a Michtav Kloli Proti. We know what Kloli Proti means, when the Rebbe would write a general letter, but wouldn't send it out just for everybody. He would send it to private people, and he would put in the name of the person he's sending it to, and then if there's anything specific he had to write to this person, at the end of the letter or someplace he would add a few words with his ksav yad or typed even to that person. So it was called a Michtav Kloli Proti. It was the same letter to many, many people, but it was also Proti because the Rebbe wrote it to the specific different people by their name and added whatever he had to add, which is shaycha specific to those people. So after this Michtav Kloli that the Rebbe wrote then, he wrote a Kloli Proti, which was written to many different people, and the Michtav Kloli Proti starts off like this, that Avsha Bola Kaman Kvar Bo B'Michtav HaKloli Miyem Shlishi Shehuchlo Beketei Parshas V'Yisrael Eis HaChoyel. Even though what I'm going to write in this letter here already was written in the Michtav Kloli, but it's not the same when you write and you ask many people together to turning and asking something specific from an individual, writing it to echad v'yochid, to one person, directly to him. It's not the same. And then the Rebbe goes on concerning the inyonim that he wants to talk about. This Michtav Kloli Proti was also sent to the Shluchim. Now, here the Rebbe added a line, because when the line says that the purpose of this Michtav Kloli Proti is because it's not the same when you write a Michtav Kloli or when you write specific to an individual specifically, that has a greater impression. Now, here is a problem, because the Shluchim were 10 Shluchim or 11 Shluchim, so the Rebbe can't say that the Michtav Kloli is for it's a lot of people together, and this is for one individual, when this is not really for one individual. So after the words that the Rebbe writes that it's not the same when you write to many together, Legabe, if you're asking somebody shlucha yoshor leechod uleyochi, to one, and echod and yochi, the two words, the Rebbe added with the Ksaviyat Kedesh like this: ulemitzias yechida hanasis al dei ichud kama yechidim, or to one entity which is made up of the combination of many individuals. In other words, he's saying that the group of the Shluchim really is one entity. So when he said before that it's different when you go directly to one person, so writing it to the group of Shluchim is really like writing to one person. And these are the words that he wrote with his Ksaviyat Kedesh. Ula Metzias Yechida, to one single Metzias entity, Hanasis al Yedei Ichud Kama Yechidim, which is done, but became through the combination, the unity of many individuals. One more letter I want to mention, which is dated Bein Yud Beis, is Gimel v'Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tamas Tov Shin Mem. The Rebbe also writes a letter to the Bochem Shluchim, which is a regular letter where he says that he confirms the receipt of what they sent to the Rebbe and the Bakosha's Broch, and the Rebbe said, I'm going to mention it at the Tzion, and at the end, before the signatures, type the word Bibrocha, and the Rebbe added a few words. after the words Bibrocha, he wrote LeTalmud Torah ve'ahava v'yireh, a brocha to learn Torah with ahava v'yireh, with love and fear of Hashem, which is something in Chassidus we learn. It's a very high madrege, and the Rebbe wrote to the Talmidim Ashluchim that they give him a brocha to learn Torah ve'ahava v'yireh, and this was written in a letter which is dated Bein Gimel v'Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz Tov Mem. My father, Olav Shalom, told me that when he was a bocher, it once came out that he stayed in one room with Rebbe the Masmid. Rebbe the Masmid came to a certain place and he was there, so he was appointed, or he was there, that he slept with him in one room. So he told me he remembers the way he sat up a whole night, didn't go to sleep, sat up a whole night to learn, and to make sure that he doesn't fall asleep, he had a bucket of cold water, a bowl of cold water, and he kept his feet in the cold water all night to keep him awake, so he shouldn't fall asleep. And another thing he said, that he was there by his Fabrengen, and one of the things he chazer over, just an expression that Rebbe the Masmid said. How we know Rebbe the Masmid would stutter. When he said a maimer, it was very clear, very smooth. But when he would talk otherwise, he would stutter. So he remembers by the Fabrengen an expression that he said, I don't know the beginning and the end what it was about, but this is the expression he said. And the way he stuttered, he said, "Heistos, as for Nelam Haza vet man kensimes nit machen." That means that from this world, from Nelam Haza, it means from Gashmis, we will not make a big fuss. But the way he said it, he says it stayed in his mind for his whole life. Such an expression, Heistos, as for Nelam Haza vet man kensimes nit machen. People wonder why Keil Mol Rachamim is printed in our Siddur, even though we never say it. Minhag Chabadis, we don't say it, not by Levaya, not by a Yortzeit. So why is it printed in the Siddur? Now there are other things also that we don't say, and it's nevertheless printed in the Siddur, like V'Shomru or Agdomes, and Einochaname. Each thing needs a reason for itself why that was printed in the Siddur. So Keil Mol Rachamim also needs a reason, even though we don't say it. But Lepeil, we know that the Rebbe did say once to say it. This was when the Rebbe Zion Schneerson, who was the brother of the Rebbetzin Chamadine, who obviously is the uncle of the Rebbe's Rebbetzin, after he passed away in Eretz Yisrael, when the Rebbe came to Kriya in 770, so the Rebbe told him to say a Keil Mol Rachamim. So from here we see that saying Keil Mol is nishkin ogifrekte zach, that there is such an inyan sometimes to say it. Now, I don't know when it is and what's the reason the Rebbe said to say then, but one thing we see that there is such a thing as Keil Mol Rachamim even by us, but when, and when not, but derech klal, the meaning is that we never say it, but it could be that there are sometimes we should, as we see from what the Rebbe did when he said to say it, and I think it was Tez Zayin Tevis Tov Shin Lamed Zayin. Everyone knows that the concept of the mitzvah tanks, the tanks of Mivtzoyim, started in the Lameds, around Lamed Daled, Be'erech. But in truth, something very similar happened much before. In the year Tovshin Chov Gimel, which is 1963, we saw there was a bus parked in front of 770. This was a school bus, but it had different writings on it. On top of the bus it said, Ufaratz Yom V'Keinu Etzafeinu V'Negbo. And lower down under the windows it said Merkaz L'Nyonei Chinuch. And we heard that this was a bus bought by a person called Reb Aaron Klein. Reb Aaron Klein was somebody who originally came from Vienna. He was very close to the Rebbe. He learned in Montreal, I think, at Temchat Mimim. And he was very, very close to the Rebbe, very much Ibrigem to the Rebbe. And he bought this bus just to show who he was. He was involved when they were expanding the shul of 770 downstairs. He was very, very much involved. He was the person who bought for the Rebbe a menorah, a present made of gold, and he gave it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe took it. And they said that Bechlal, the Rebbe didn't take presents from anybody. But from him, the Rebbe would take a present if he gave, and he gave the Rebbe a golden menorah. So just to show his connection to the Rebbe. So he bought this bus, took out the seats, put in there bookshelves with Svarim, and Svarim about Yiddishkeit, and he made a little corner there where you could put on film, and the bus would go around from community to community to have people borrow books like a library, be able to sit there and read, and be able to go in and put on film. And during the day it would go around. At night it would be parked in front of 770. Once the Rebbe went into that bus, he has to go in, and he looked at it, and he made comments. One of the comments he made is that he would like that the corner where you're able to put on film with somebody should have a curtain, that the person that puts on film should be able to have privacy when he puts on that film. Maybe he'll be embarrassed of others, or whatever other reason, he should have privacy. The Rebbe made a comment. But this bus was made for Afot Samayonis. Shabbos, Parshas Kisove, Chayel, that year, the Rebbe spoke about this bus. And the Rebbe said that he wants to mention that there's a chidush that happened in Afot Samayonis, because Bechlal, from time to time, new chidushim happen in Afot Samayonis. So there is a chidush that now Afot Samayonis would be done through a merkava, which goes on 4 feet, on 4 aglayim. This was a play on words, I guess, of the merkava that we learn in Tanakh, the merkava of Yecheskel, where we always talk about the 4 aglayim merkava, the 4 legs of the merkava. Anyway, so the Rebbe said that through this you'll be able to do Afot Samayonis, people will be able to take svarim, and they'll be able to put on film, etc., etc. This is a chidush. The Rebbe connected to Bechlal. Before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a time when the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that there is a Eir Chodesh, a new Eir, every Rosh Hashanah comes down to this world. So this is also a chidush in Afot Samayonis. And the Rebbe said that the people who are involved should come up and say L'chaim. And the Rebbe gave it very much chshivas. And that bus taki went around from community to community. And there were people who drove it, and they would take it around, and people taka utilized it a lot. Summertime it went to the country, and it went from bungalow to bungalow colony, and people would go in and people would use it, and this did a lot in the Afot Samayonis. And this was all done by this Reb Aaron Klein, who was very, very close to the Rebbe and wanted to do things to give Nachas Ruch to the Rebbe, to do what the Rebbe wanted. Then eventually this stopped. I don't know why, maybe because the bus broke down, I think, I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly how it stopped. And years later, started the concept of the mitzvah tanks. The Seder by the Rebbe was many times, Hishan Rabbah at night, before the Rebbe came down to shul to say Tilim, he would go into a sukkah for a while. And then he would come back, and then later on go down to the shul to say Tilim with the minyan. So I remember once standing there in the hallway, Hishan Rabbah at night. This wasn't the Chofs, and I see the Rebbe walk out from his room and went to the sukkah, stayed in the sukkah for a while, and then after that he went back to his room. Now I was standing not far from there. When the Rebbe came out of his sukkah to go back to his room, he passed by obviously the hall. In the hallway there was a table. In front of that case where you have the Svarim of Merkas showcase, there was a table there, and on the table were different Svarim, and there was a bocher on the other side of the table next to that showcase selling these Svarim. Now, these were not regular Merkas Svarim. These were Svarim that Bochrim would give out, because a lot of the Sifrei Chassidus, like the Samach Vov and all the other Svarim of the Rebbe Rashab, were not printed. So there would be Bochrim who would stencil it, or we call it kopir, mimeograph it, which is not real print, and then bind it, or not bind it, different things, and they would sell it. Bochrim would sell it. So this Bocher was standing on this side of the table. On his table were all these types of svarim, and he was selling it. When the Rebbe came in from the sukkah, he passed by that table. And I'm standing from far, and I saw that the Rebbe's eye caught something that's laying on the table. What's laying on the table was kopirt, the Bir Tanya of Rabbi Yankev Kadaner, who was the Chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe, who wrote the Sefer Sipurim Niroim. And he has a Bir on Tanya, and that Bir on Tanya was laying on that table. Next to it, I think it was there also the Bir on Tanya of Reb Shmuel Greinem. And the Rebbe's eye caught it, and the Rebbe stopped. I'm watching from far. I see the Rebbe stopped in the middle, which was something strange. Like this, the Rebbe would go into the sukkah, come back from the sukkah, go straight into his room. But here the Rebbe stopped by the table. His eye caught the sefer. He picked it up and started blättering, started looking through it. And I think he also picked up the Pirish of the Bir Tanya of Reb Shmuel Greinem, but the main one that he was looking at was the Bir Tanya of Reb Yankev Kadaner. And that Gebletter, he was standing there for a few moments, I don't remember how long, maybe a minute even, or maybe more, looking through it, and he finished looking through it, and he put it down. And then he continued into his room, went to his room, and later on he went down to say Tilim into the minyan downstairs. But this was something very strange, that the Rebbe stopped and looked at the Svarim and picked up a specific sefer, looked at it and showed interest specifically in that sefer. So there were not too many people standing around, but when I told somebody, he says he heard that there's a letter from the Rebbe, that the Rebbe was looking for this beer. And the truth is, when the Igris were printed, so in Igris Chelik Beis, there's a letter written to Reb Nissen Nemenov, where the Rebbe writes to him, this is page Reish Pei Daled, the end of Reish Pei Daled, beginning of Reish Pei Hey. The Rebbe writes to him like this. This is in Tovshin Ches. Ula Yedu Alei. Maybe you know that somebody who has the Sichas of the Rebbe Rashab, those that did not go into, were not included in the Torah Sholem. V'chein Mare Mikemis, Sipurim v'ha'oras alatanya, miziknei hachsidim. And also Mare Mikemis and stories and ha'oras antanya from the elder Chassidim, ubifrat, Reb Yankiv Kadaner and Reb Shmuel Greinem. Especially he's looking for the Pirush of Reb Yankiv Kadaner and Reb Shmuel Greinem. So we can see that it's true that the Rebbe had not had it, I guess in Tovshin Ches, he didn't have the Pirush, and the Rebbe was looking for it. Also there's a letter in Chelik Ches of the Igris. This is already from Tovshin Yudaled, written to Reb Shlomo Yosef Zevin, to Harav Zevin, on page Reish Chav Hei. The Rebbe writes to him that when you write, you have a small sefer, Pirush Ksav Yad al Tanya, and the Rebbe goes on about it. And the Rebbe says, Aval Motzosi Kan, I found here a Bir Tanya, Kfi HaRoshim Olav, it's written on it that this is from Reb Yankiv Kadaner. And there it starts from the beginning of Lekutei Amorim, Perik Aleph, and it goes till Perik Yud Beis. So we see that by the time of Tovshin Yudala, the Rebbe already had gotten the Pirush, the Bir of Reb Yankiv Kadaner, this one that he says goes to Perik Yud Beis. But the one that the Bocher was selling seems to be something more than that, because I actually bought a copy then also, and that I think goes till Perik Chof Ches. So anyway, the Rebbe was really looking for this Pirush once. He didn't have it, later he got part of it. So that's why the Rebbe, when he passed by and his eye caught the Pirush of Rabbi Yankiv Kadaner, he picked it up and was geblettet and looked through it for a few moments and then put it down and went back into his room. What happened later, I don't know. The Rebbe asked for it to see if he could get it or not. I didn't hear anything. I don't know what happened. But this is what I saw. I saw him come in from the sukkah, stop by the table, picked it up, bletted through it, looking through it, and put it down, and then went into his room. I'd like to mention a few more things of the anhogis of the Rebbe during davening. The meaning is that when you say Kodesh, Baruch, Yimlich, people jump up. Make a jump up. So the way I remember the times that I paid attention, so by Shachris, the Rebbe would jump up by Kodesh, by Baruch, and by Yimlich. By Mincha, he would only jump up by Kodesh and Baruch. By Musaf, the times I looked, sometimes I saw him did jump up by Yimlich, and sometimes he didn't jump up. But by Kodesh and Baruch, he did. When he davened for the Amid, and he said Kedusha middle Chazoros Hashatz, he never jumped up at all for nothing, not for Kodesh, not for Baruch, not for Yimlich. And the reason is because if that time it's Shemoneh Esrei, Chazoros Hashatz is Shemoneh Esrei. So when the Rebbe is saying Kaddish, it's not like we say Kaddish, Kedusha, when you answer Kedusha. When the Rebbe would say Kedusha, it was the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, because Chazoros Hashatz, the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, you can't do anything. Also, the Rebbe would never move his head to the right and to the left like some people do by Kodesh and things like that. Kodesh, 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 they go up at the sides. The Rebbe didn't do that at all. Another thing, when the Rebbe said Krishma, so when he said the word Echod, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echod, he would move his head to all the sides like it's mentioned as Shita in Shulchan Aruch. He would move his head from the right to the left and then front and back and up, because it's supposed to be merames of the fact when you say Echod, you're supposed to have in mind that Davish is the king of the seven Akim and the Oretz, seven heavens and the earth, and the Daled Ruach HaSeil on the four sides of the world, so he would make with his head to all these sides. Also, sometimes when he davened upstairs by Ma'ariv, and there was a chazan, he would wait for the Rebbe to finish Hashem Elokeichem Emes in order to say out loud Hashem Elokeichem Emes. That was happened sometime that the Rebbe was like behind, because he started Krishma a little late, so the Eilu finished Krishma, so the Rebbe would, in the middle of his Krishma, pick up his head, look at the Chazan, sometimes, it didn't happen too often, but it happened sometimes, he would pick up his head, look at the Chazan, and shake his head. In other words, you can say already Hashem Elokeichem Emes. And the Chazan would say then Hashem Elokeichem Emes, even though the Rebbe wasn't holding it there yet. I do remember once a Chazan that the Rebbe did that and he still didn't do it. He felt that it wasn't right to say Hashem Elokeichem Emes before the Rebbe finished. I don't know if it's the right thing or not, because the Rebbe did motion his head, but I remember once that happened. Another thing I want to mention is that when the Rebbe davened upstairs Shabbos Mincha, so when it came to saying Zeus HaTorah by Hagbe, the Rebbe would move over closer. In other words, the Rebbe stood, his place by Shabbos Mincha was by the edge next to the Cheder Sheni. His stender stood there, the table that was there, that's there, and the Rebbe sat on the other side of the table, meaning with his back to the wall, where you have the window between the Cheder Sheni and the Zal. The Rebbe would sit there. So, but he would stand, by Kriyas HaTorah, he would stand by the stender. But when it came to saying V'zeis HaTorah, he would take a few steps away from the stender to get closer to the bimeh and look at the Sefer Torah, and then he would say V'zeis HaTorah. And this fits to what the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur, that Kishmagbiim HaSefer Torah, L'Ha'aretz Haksav L'Am, when you pick up the Sefer Torah to show the writing to the people, Kol Odam Yishtadel L'Karev Atzmin L'Teva, every person should try to get closer to the bimeh, K'dei Sheyuchel Likrei Mashakosa b'Sefer Torah, you're able to read what it says in the Sefer Torah. Be'eis Hagboas HaSefer Torah, when you do Hagba, when you pick up the Sefer Torah. Be'yemer, then he would say V'zeis HaTorah. So the Rebbe would actually walk over closer, by every Shabbos, by Mincha, he would walk closer over a few steps to the Bima in order to look at the Sefer Torah closer, and then he would say V'zeis HaTorah. A few more anhagis of the Rebbe that he did during davening that comes to mind is, number one, that when the Rebbe davened Shachris with the minyan, which means Shabbos, Yontev, or the other times in the year, few times in the year when he would daven Shachris with the minyan, B'derech Klal, the Rebbe would try during davening a few times to make it the two tzitzis in the front and the two tzitzis in the back should be even. He would schlep down and make sure, holding with the hand, the right hand, the two right tzitzis, and with the left hand, he would then later, the two left tzitzis, he would make sure that they are even, that they come down the same way. Didn't do it always, but those years he did it many, many times. Another thing, that by the Filas Apayim, when the Rebbe did the Filas Apayim, after you say Tachnun, you say Vidu, he would put his head down on his hands over his head and put his head down. So by Shachris, he used to usually put it with the talis. He would hold the talis in his hand and put the talis over his face, and that's how we'd say the Filas Apayim. With the right hand, and by Mincha, obviously he didn't wear a talis, he did it over his hand with a surtuk, because the din is that you can't do it on your bare hand, you got to do it on a beged. So by Shachris, he would usually do it with the talis, hold the talis over his face, and by Mincha, he would just put his head over the hand, put his head down over the hand, with the hand was in the surtuk, with the sleeve of the hand, so that's doing it over a beged. Another thing which I noticed many times, that when he did it by Mincha, so then he was able to see in the Siddur, the Nefilas Apayim, the Kapitel Tilim that we say, and his left hand was over his head, but he made sure that his left hand was not laying on the Siddur, because sometimes what people do is that when they look into the Siddur and their left hand is over their head and they're putting their head down, so their hand goes on the Siddur because the capital is on the right side of the Siddur, so you could look into the Siddur and your hand is laying on the Siddur. The Rebbe, the times that I looked, made sure that his hand would be elevated from the Siddur, but not laying directly on the Siddur. And another thing, Motzei Shabbos, when the Rebbe davened upstairs, his place of davening Motzei Shabbos, as I mentioned many times, was in the beginning of the shul, right by the door to the hallway. He would come out of his room, go through the hallway, past the elevator, and then go into the shul. And right there by that corner, by the clock, that's where the Rebbe would daven Ma'ariv Motzei Shabbos. He would go in, the door would be closed, and he would daven Ma'ariv standing there. So after Ma'ariv, after the last Kaddish, the Rebbe would still stay and wait for Havdalah. The Rebbe would open the door to the hallway so that the people standing on the other side of the door should also be able to hear Havdalah. And the Rebbe did this every Motzei Shabbos. He would open the door that people should be able to hear Havdalah, the people who are standing there. Another thing I want to mention, that when the Rebbe would walk in the door, he would touch the mezuzah, but he would not kiss it. He would put his hand over the mezuzah, but he would not kiss his hand like people do. Also, when he went to shul and out of the shul that everyone saw, he would touch the pareches, but he wouldn't kiss his hand like people do. When you touch the mezuzah, those people that touch the pareches, if they do, they kiss their hand. The Rebbe would not do that when he touched the mezuzah or the pareches. One of the things that happened in Lubavitch is that the Rebbe sent Bochrim Shluchim to different Lubavitch yeshivas over the world. Already in Tovshin Chof Beis, the Rebbe sent a group of shluchim to Eretz Yisrael, a group of Bochum shluchim to Brunei, to France, and later on, a stronger Eifon, it was Tovshin Chov Zayin when he sent shluchim to Australia, and then later Tovshin Lamed Daled when the Rebbe sent shluchim, Bochum shluchim to the yeshiva in Miami. And the whole purpose of them being sent was to be mechazik the yeshivas, to strengthen the yeshivas, which should be done through learning Torah. That's what the Rebbe wanted. They should themselves learn Torah there, and also be Neir Lahoyer, be a shining light to help others, which means to help the Bochum yeshiva and to bring light into the community. That's the job of the shluchim. And really, the whole thing was basically because the yeshivas needed chizuk. Actually, when it came to the second group of shluchim to Miami, we were talking about it. I wrote to the Rebbe something about it. So the Rebbe answered me, this is the Nekuda Bechlolis, that Be'etzem, what he wants is that we shouldn't have to send shluchim. That the shluchim are only there when it starts to be mechazik the yeshiva. But the yeshiva should already start standing on its own feet, that you shouldn't have to send shluchim. And I heard that the Rebbe did that also concerning Australia once he wanted to stop sending shluchim because you don't need a shluchim anymore. Nevertheless, it didn't work out, and the Rebbe continued sending shluchim to the yeshivas. And it's all for them to bring a chizuk to the yeshiva, to learn themselves and to learn with others and to bring light around themselves to be Neiros Lahoyer. One year, the Bochum, actually in Miami, some of the shluchim had a disagreement with the Anhole. Now, I could say they meant L'Shem Shemayim. They really meant because they felt certain things have to be changed. But it was done in a way that they made a whole tumult and things like that. And finally, it got to the Rebbe. And this is what the Rebbe wrote. And I'll quote the Lashon of the Rebbe's answer. Sof, sof, tolk, sof kol sof. You should make a seder, al dvar ha-bachurim sheyichishom, concerning the Bochrim who are there. Lahasbirom, to explain to them, shenishloch shom elil Torah, that they were sent there to learn Torah, dash. Obeim eiskim bepolitike kayetze bezen. If they're involved in politics and things like that, Eini muchan lekachas al atzmei bittul Torah shelehem betir shluchim. I'm not ready to take upon myself, the Rebbe says, their bittul Torah as shluchim. Another dash. V'yachzeru behegdem lahamokim shemishom nishlecha. Let them go back as fast as possible to the place that they were sent from. V'kal, v'dal. V'kal means v'kal lahavin. It's very easy to understand. It's not such a deep thing. It's very obvious. And v'dal means that Dai lemavin. It's enough to say this. In other words, there's more to it, but it's enough if I say this. Now, this is a very, very sharp answer. So, L'Poel, obviously, everyone took it serious and they knew what they have to do, but this brought out another point. Because sometimes after things get into a Seder, you forget the importance of it and the whole concept of them being shluchim, that really they are shluchim from the Rebbe. It's only bochrim, it's only for a short while, etc. You get the feeling that maybe that's not a real shlichus. When the Rebbe wrote this brought such a feeling that as much as the Rebbe criticized, so to speak, but nevertheless here the Rebbe expressed clearly that they are shluchim, and he sent them, and he takes achrayas for them. He said, if it's like this, I cannot take achrayas. But obviously this shows that be'etzem the Rebbe takes achrayas for the bochrim shluchim. This shows the great schus that the Bochum Shluchim have, but it also shows what their job has to be. The way the Rebbe establishes is the main thing is to strengthen the yeshiva. And that's why the Rebbe was thinking that if eventually you should stop sending Shluchim, but it didn't work out. In other words, the Rebbe, I guess, agreed that the chizuk of the yeshiva is always good, and the Rebbe continues, that's their job, to learn Torah and to be Neres Lahoyer. But then later, a few years later, there was actually a sicha about this inyan, and that will be in the next voice note. The second Sikha for Parsha V'Zeis HaBrocha in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yudaled, is taken from the Fabrengen, Leil Simchas Torah Tovshin Lamed Daled. And towards the end of the Sikha, the Nekuda there is that the Sheirish of Neshomis, the Sheirish of Yidden, Lamailo, is higher than the Sheirish of Torah. Nevertheless, Lamato, how are they Megala their Sheirish through Torah? That's why the Seder is that Yisrael miskasher and be'iraisa, Yidden connect themselves to Torah, and Torah is miskasher be'kutshabricho. Torah connects to the Eibishter, so the connection that Yidden get to the Eibishter is through Torah. But when they get the connection through Torah, that nisgala the sheirish of Yidden, which is higher than Torah, that they're closer to the Eibishter than the Torah, and then they are megala this, mamshich this also into the Torah, that even originally they are lower than the Torah, and they connect to the Eibishter through Torah, but when the Torah connects them, so then Vet nisgale that the sheirish of Yidden is higher than the Torah, and they're mamshich this higher sheirish into the Torah. And when the Rebbe said this by the Fabrengen, he added, and he said, like we know b'negei tshuva, that tshuva is higher than Torah. B'horaya, tshuva could forgive for avedas that you did and the pkam that you have b'negei Talmud Torah. So Hashem tshuva is higher. Nevertheless, the gilui of the union of tshuva comes through Torah dafke. When the people who prepared the Sikha for Hagoah wrote this in the Sikha, wrote these words, that al derech hayedua b'negei tshuva, and went on to explain b'negei tshuva. When the Rebbe was Magiya the Sikha, the Rebbe crossed out this paragraph where there's an example of tshuva, and the Rebbe wrote these words, Guf v'neshama la'osid lovei. In other words, this has to do with the union of Guf and Neshama la'osid lovei. Inyan Aruch, that's a long thing, v'lei atiku akana, don't be mighty, don't bring it down here, because it's too long. So the Rebbe said this is connected to the union of Guf and Neshama la'osid lovei, and this is a long inyan, and therefore not to bring it here, and the Rebbe crossed out this paragraph. Now we have to learn Pshat in what the Rebbe meant when he wrote these words.